Hey everyone, welcome to Corporate Quitter. Today's guest is Danielle Roberts. She is a consultant, speaker, entrepreneur, content creator, and millennial thought leader with 12 years of experience educating and empowering others personally and professionally. Now, her whole spiel is basically anti-work. She believes that work-life balance is propaganda. She also believes that dream jobs don't exist. And she also has many, many years of experience kind of dealing with leadership, educating people on career things and all of that. So she has a ton of insight when it comes to helping employees and managers, right, those shitty managers that we want to do better, to have a better work experience. Danielle's on a mission to dismantle hustle culture and build a more human-first future of work, which we can all agree on. And our connection was actually through Gabrielle Judge, who is the anti-work girl boss. She coined the phrase lazy girl job. So it seems like all of us together, we're kind of on the same sort of track of finding freedom and trying to find kind of a better way of working, right? Advocating for a better work environment. And if it's not the case, you can't find a solution through there, then you become a corporate quitter, essentially, right? Like all three of us have basically become. Now, before we get into today's episode, I do want to thank our sponsor, Novo. They're not a bank, they're a fintech company, and I've been using them to basically get my shit together when it comes to business. I use them for a ton of different things like invoicing and payroll. They have a couple other really exciting products that they're developing that will happen by the end of the year. So I would encourage you to sign up now so you can reap those rewards once it becomes live. It's completely free to sign up. If you use the link below, you get $40 to start your account. Now let's get into today's episode. Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Corporate Quitter. I'm really excited to have Danielle on today. Luckily, Gabrielle Judge of the Anti-Work Girl Boss, you've probably heard of Lazy Girl Jobs. She was the one who connected us, which is really great because obviously we're kind of all talking about very similar things. We're all kind of on the same wavelength of like transparency and openness and advocating for obviously better work experiences and or maybe leading towards entrepreneurship or choosing for yourself, right? Finding a different form of freedom. So Danielle, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. So how does one become basically like an anti-career coach? Or I forget what your phrase is. It's like anti-dream job, anti-career coach. How does one become, how did you get here basically from where you were?
Yeah, it's been a decade-long unfolding.
Wait, really? You've been doing that for that long? I don't know why I was only under the impression you were doing this for 3 years.
Anti-career coach? Yeah, I've been doing anti-career coaching for a couple of years, but it's rooted in stuff that began a decade ago. And it took me a really long time, to understand myself and what I wanted because I was so used to showing up for other people in my life that I never got in touch with like who I was.
Yep.
I was always a high achiever, like type A perfectionist. And I graduated top of my classes in both high school and college. I like worked 3 jobs to put myself through. I was like, I'm going to make it. I'm first gen college student, family's like very blue collar. So I was like, I need to make my conditions better than the ones that I grew up in. And that kind of started to change when I was 23. I was working in advertising, and it's an industry known for like 70-hour weeks, but I loved it. Like I loved the hustle. I was like, yes, we're going to work, and then we're going to go to happy hour with friends, and then we're going to go to networking events after that. And it was just like, that's what I knew.
But all I know is it's a grind. Like you are literally I don't want to say slaving away, but like it's brutal. It's brutal.
Yes. Well, and what they do is they're like, okay, well, thank you for working late. We're going to pay for your $7 dinner if you stay past 7 o'clock, and we're going to put a bar in the agency so you can have a beer after 5 to entice you to stay. And then you're like, oh, that's pretty cool. But when you balance out the hours of it, you're like, oh, I think I'm making actually less than minimum wage right now. But I loved that. And 23-year-old me didn't know the difference. Mm-hmm. And then my mom actually got sick with cancer, and within 9 weeks she had passed away.
Wow.
And I had to have,
oh my God, I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
That's such a short time frame too,
Yeah, she had been sick with brain cancer, started when I was 11, and then she was in remission for 12 years, and then got sick again. And I sacrificed so many times going home for dinner or like answering her calls because I was at work. And I was even working on the floor of a hospital waiting room because I was making $28K a year. I had $600 a month student loan payments. I couldn't afford to just take FMLA and go unpaid. So I had my laptop open and I couldn't give the attention to one of the most like traumatic experiences of my life and be like fully present because I had to work. Mm-hmm. So she passed away, got back to my desk after 3 days of bereavement leave because, like, how are you supposed to grieve, bury your mom, and, like, process everything in 3 days is ridiculous. And then everything was like normal around me. Like, everything is operating like normal. And I was just like, what the fuck? So I was like, all right, maybe I just need to find more work-life balance. Like, I enjoy the work that I do, but maybe I just need to be out of agency. Found a job close to home and helped my dad out for a while. And about 3 to 4 years into that, there were massive issues with leadership. And I was like, maybe it's just the industry and working in person. I need to find a remote job. So that's what I did. And then I got laid off from that. And that's when I transitioned into coaching and consulting. And I had to ask myself some pretty interesting questions. Like, I have been searching for this quote unquote dream job and this circumstance outside of myself that is finally going to give me the happiness that I've been searching for. And then I was like, well, maybe dream jobs don't exist. And I've been chasing this illusion of what I've been taught I should want and look for and feel. And that is what essentially started what I'm doing now.
So you mentioned that dream jobs don't exist, which I love because that was also a rude awakening for me too. It was like, oh, this thing that I'm chasing, it's never really going to 100% be attainable, right? And you change as a human being, the world changes. So can you elaborate on why you believe that and how people can find happiness in their current jobs or even in entrepreneurship, right? Current employment sort of situation.
Yeah. So I say dream jobs don't exist because work is always going to suck in some capacity. Like, even when you're an entrepreneur and you have more freedom and autonomy than when you are in a corporate environment, there are still trade-offs that you have to make. You have a couple of years of definitely grinding to build it to something that feels sustainable. But also, like, I hate doing my accounting. It's the last thing that I want to do, but it's just the nature of doing it. So to find happiness in a job, whether that is a traditional or a non-traditional route, it has to align with your values, your internal and your external values. So your internal values are basically like, here is how I want to feel every single day. And your external values are, here is the impact that I want to make on another individual, a community, society, the world at large. So you have that deep connection, that why that ties you to what you do. When you understand what your values are, that will point you to non-negotiables. Here is what is not going to be a trade-off, and here is what I am willing to be flexible on as I build my career. And then there's the idea that there's no such thing as permanence. Like, the dream job, it like gives you this hyper focus into one lane, and you ignore everything on your periphery that could be good for you because you're like, oh no, my parents told me that I should want this, that there was money in this, that this would give me a certain amount of social status and prestige. But like, life is more nuanced and dynamic than that, even in my business.
Volatile. It's way more volatile than it's ever been before, right? Like, you can't just stay at a job for the rest of your life. That's not possible. And even like layoffs are happening and things shift, like the economics, right? Some people change jobs because their job that they wanted, the one they actually went to school, they can't pay for their, basic living expenses through that one avenue of work. That's why I left teaching. I was a teacher and I left. I'm like, I can't pay off my loans on a teaching salary. So I went to Wall Street. Not ideal. Was it part of the plan?
Right. And that's the thing. It's like, life and our career always evolves in a way that we didn't anticipate. Mm-hmm. Like, what we envision for ourselves, like, if somebody told me this is the work that I would be doing 5 years ago, I'd be like, what? Like, there's no way. And 5 years from now, I know it's going to look really, really different and be somewhere that I didn't anticipate now. But work at the baseline is supposed to provide for our basic human needs. If it doesn't do that, we can't talk about finding fulfillment and following our passions and all of that kind of stuff because we're just in constant fight or flight mode. So I think at the core of it, it's understanding what your values are, understanding the impact that you want to make, and trying to find an environment that checks those boxes, and then putting healthy boundaries into place around the rest. So if you need to build something up on the side, you have multiple jobs, you're in the gig economy, you can balance it all. And there's never going to be a life that's in perfect balance, right? Where there's always going to be trade-offs that we have to make too. It's just about having that understanding of who we are, what's important to us, and how to position ourselves in the market to support what we need at this moment in time. Because our career evolves over decades. 5 years from now is not my problem. Today is my problem.
I like that you mentioned that work-life balance. It's just a jargony term. It's not actually attainable, and also the quote-unquote balance we're looking for is just reprioritization of the things that are important to us. right? And that
Yes.
changes. So, like, that's really what it is in a nutshell. But so you mentioned finding an environment that suits you. So, I think one of the things that are really kind of like a hot topic these past few years is like humanness, right? Being truly human at work. So, like, can you kind of define like what that means and how the workplace is evolving for that and how like even employees can take it among themselves to cultivate that, right? We're going to get to managers, shitty managers later on, and that whole issue of leadership. But right now, from the employee perspective, what can people do to make their work experience more human and help them cultivate that environment on their own without leadership's involvement, if at all
Yeah.
possible?
Yeah. So leadership, I want to point out in this context, is like the C-suite, right? The people who are making the financial decisions that affect all of their teams under them. The
Basically, the
managers and then
person,
the
yeah,
yeah,
who's
the
making
individual
300K a
contributors.
year and doesn't know how to use a fax machine. Those type of
Literally
people.
doesn't fucking care about you. Like literally doesn't care about
Yeah.
you. Like just wants to make as much profit as humanly possible. So I think returning to our humanity in the workplace starts with recognizing the humanity in ourselves and each other and learning to treat people with the dignity and the respect that they deserve. We cannot wait for leadership in the C-suite to do that for us. And managers have a huge effect on the experience of their employees. There was a study done, it was either Workplace or Workforce Institute, I think, that said managers have the same effect on your mental health as your spouse or partner, and more of an effect on your mental health than your therapist and your doctor. And you take that shit home with you. Like you have a toxic work experience, toxic manager. It's not just for the however many hours you're logged in. It infiltrates your health, your relationships, all of it. So I use a combination of design thinking and psychology in my practice to have this contextual framework for how we can meet people where they are and try and recognize the humanity in ourselves and each other. And it starts with understanding Maslow's hierarchy of needs and then Maslow's drivers of burnout. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs is basically like a pyramid, and there are 5 different layers to that pyramid. On the bottom is our physiological needs. So literally food, rest, water, like the things that we need to function on the daily. The next up is safety. So like, do we have a roof over our head? Are we in an environment that is not harmful? So like right there with those 2 levels, when you're thinking about the current state of work and the cost of living, we can't talk about finding fulfillment if people can't afford their basic human necessities and are not in psychologically safe environments. Those are the foundational issues we need to fix first. Because when we think about burnout, work overload, lack of control, transparency, and autonomy, there's a direct correlation between those 2.
Absolutely.
As we go up the pyramid, we have things like belonging, we have esteem, and then finally self-actualization or fulfillment. So these are things that all humans need to live a fulfilling life. Many people cannot access the top level of that pyramid because they're just struggling to make ends meet. Let me put it this way. You have an employee and they're in the gig. They have a full-time job and they have a side hustle because they can't afford to live. So that means automatically they're probably not getting the rest that they need. They're probably not getting the sense of community that they need. So as a manager, you need to say, okay, well, how can I create a space in the work week for them to like maybe upskill and position themselves for a larger increase? Or to say like, you know what, flexible work arrangements where you can work whatever hours you need as long as you're getting the work done. I don't care. Or let me build some community in the workday for you. Like who within the organization are you interested in talking to? Block out your Friday. I want you to use your Friday mornings to go talk to them. And I think we have to start asking how we can support each other that way in the workplace in like a mutual aid capacity rather than a hyper individualism capacity to change the workplace from the inside out. Because Gen Z is surpassing boomers in the workforce this year. And a lot of what we were up against is like that old status quo thinking, like the world of work they grew up in is not the one that we live in. So we take a place in shaping that future of work. And I think this is how we develop leaders, a new generation of leaders, and rewrite the rules of an outdated workforce. We have to talk to the people that we work with. We have to say that we're in this together and not just say like I understand not wanting to go above and beyond and the quiet, like I understand all of that, but we need collective like community care. We need mutual aid at this point rather than just like every person for themselves.
It definitely feels like a dog eat dog world more than ever right now. But I'm wondering, like, okay, for the managers out there, I think most people who are listening are probably employees or they might be sort of middle managers, maybe not the C-suite. But I mean, when you think about like prioritizing quality of life and stuff like that, if you yourself as a manager even are that stressed and also that tight on things where you have to create a secondary income of sorts, how, like, is it even possible for them to provide the support and the things that like their employees are seeking, like the things you just mentioned? Because in my brain, I'm like, if everyone up the chain except for the people at the very top are struggling, like there is no way unless you bridge the gap. But C-suite needs to give a fuck, right? They actually need to care about the fact that everyone's struggling, and that we haven't yet even hit the ceiling. We haven't even broken the surface on that.
Yeah. And that's the issue, right? Because you have managers who are not getting the resources they need from their leadership, which causes their teams to leave. And then that work falls back to the managers or the other team members. And then the managers get feedback that they can't, oh, you're not doing the big picture thinking that we need you to do because you're too burnout. So I think that it takes the managers, I don't want to say lying, we'll say like miscommunicating, like to C-suite, that like, okay, we like, here's what's actually realistic. Oh, this deadline, yeah, we could technically hit that by the end of this week, but like, no, we're going to push that a week out so I can give my team some breathing room. It also takes them embodying healthy work-life balance. Like, how are they modeling healthy work-life balance for the people on their team?
Which also is hard because in my experience, many of my managers, at least the bad ones, did not have good work-life balance. They were not emulating a life that I wanted to emulate. I did not agree with their values and the way they kind of went about things. A lot of like cliquey behavior and toxic kind of responses to things. But we had talked about how managers there was like a Gallup study that basically only 20% of managers are fit to lead. So in this case, again, if we're having such a problem with the C-suite acknowledging that there are issues down the chain in terms of work, again, burnout and all of these things, and then we don't have managers who are trained properly, like, are we finding some place where things can work? Because is it with these managers, they don't have the self-awareness? Is it that they're just not trained properly? Like, what can we do as employees to even support our managers so maybe they do need help and they're open to it, but they just don't know what to do?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's all about how we position it to our managers. Like, we can't go to them and say, like, you lack self-awareness. Like, you're a terrible, shitty boss.
I wish I could, but
I know, same. I've had some toxic leaders in my day. I think it starts with like, okay, I've found these leadership development resources, and like, can we find some budget for all of our team to take this together? Here's how I envision it making your life easier in the long run. Like, C-suite will find budget for, leadership development, professional development in some cases. So if you find something that you can pitch to your manager and say, this is what we want to do as a team, and we would like you to like do this with us as well, and this is how it's going to save you time, make your life easier, make a process smoother, they're going to be on board. You're going to solve a real problem for them. And through that, they're going to hopefully learn about themselves and build some of that self-awareness. There's also people like me who go directly into organizations and talk about leadership development training and employee engagement in a very matter-of-fact way. Because when we think about their problems are productivity, growth, employee turnover costs, all of that. But employee turnover isn't the problem. Productivity isn't the problem. Burnout isn't the problem. It's the work overload. It's the misalignment of resources. So we need to be clear about the problems that we are trying to solve for them. I think that's the first step in developing self-awareness, because with the study that you mentioned, only 18% display a high.
Oh, it's even lower. Oh shit. Okay.
Less than 1 in 5.
Not
so not even a full ass human being displays a high level of talent for managing others. And the difference in skill set between being an individual contributor versus being a people manager is much different. Like, you manage things, you lead people. Like, that's the difference. So the solution is leadership development training for mid-level managers at this point in time, because we're not going to change how the C-suite thinks.
Unfortunately, it's a time thing. And they have to, like, basically through that time then see the pain points in their numbers, in their salaries, and all these things for them to make a difference, make actual change. But so going back to, again, right now, the employee focus, what they can do in the micro, right, in the short term, One of the things you said, which is really cute, is like work-life balance is propaganda. That's adorable. We talked about work-life balance a little bit before, but I'm just wondering again, if let's say people, for example, I knew I was in a toxic environment. I was like, I'm going to hunker down and just do this for a year. I'm going to get as much knowledge as I can. I'm going to save my money, and then I'm going to quit. And then I did. I quit in, about, I think, 8 months later after making that mental decision. So in that case, would you have any strategies to help people basically like build strong values outside of work, or even start to like cultivate things that are fulfilling? So at least while they're kind of like in the shit, because let's be honest, it happens, like, so they can feel like they're actually, I don't want to say even growing, but just like enjoying life a little bit more, and it's not as painful. Because in my experience,
that's what it's all about, right?
Yeah.
Is enjoying life. Like, what is the point?
I know. It's just, it seems like a very far away thing for most people. Like, wow, what a concept. You don't have to be miserable, and listen, we all have, there's bad days don't make a bad life, as they say. But I also bring this up because I want to talk about both of us. We're sober, right? We're alcohol free. Mm-hmm. And one of my key indicators that I need to leave was that I was drinking too much, right? So it basically was like, okay, I have this realization, a toxic manager, I'm going to hold out for a year, find fulfillment outside of work, make my quit plan, and stop drinking because I was drinking to numb the pain. So sorry, that's like a multi-part answer. But first, let's talk about what you can do outside of work if you have to hunker down, and then we'll talk into like the coping mechanism aspect of things.
So yeah, work-life balance is like one of those professional pieces of propaganda because it's a false dichotomy. It implies that you have to choose between work or life, and life is way more dynamic than just like one life bucket, and it's all life. So we need a balanced life that work is a part of, and I like to think of it in quality of life quadrants instead. So first and foremost, it's like your wellness, your mental, your emotional, your spiritual health. Because if you don't have your health, you have nothing. Like your case in point of if you're drinking all of the time outside of work, that's going to affect your anxiety levels, going to affect your sleep. You're not going to be able to have the energy to put toward almost anything else in your life to the level that you would want to feel that sense of peace and groundedness. It's all right, what in my mental, my physical, my spiritual health, what's my gas gauge on that, basically. The second is your relationships. So what is the quality of the relationships that you have around you? Your intimate relationships, your interpersonal, your social and community connections. Do you have a third space that you can go to, that you can look forward to outside of work? And what are the qualities and the energy of those people that you are spending time around?
Big one.
I like to look, that it's
literally
that. And I think a lot of people too will think that they need to change so many different things in their lives for it to be where they want it to be. But a lot of it is like really getting back to basics. I think everything is like energy, and I look for
I'm a little bitch over here too, so we're literally so aligned. It's fine.
There's science behind this too, because it's like you only have a certain amount of fucks to give every single day, and if you are giving your fucks to the wrong energy, like that is just the cycle that's going to perpetuate, because that is how your brain works. It takes the information as true. It's not a fact finder. It just wants to reinforce your safety. So no matter what environment you're in, it's going to be an energetic exchange. So the qualities that I like to look for quality relationships are positive, affirming, and generative. So positive, not in that like we're delusional that there's no problems in the world, but that they are hopeful that they can solve problems, that they are resilient and are willing to work towards solutions. Affirming is that, like, especially I'm sure you can resonate being a business owner, that you have friends who validate you. And they're not like, oh, what are you doing? That's so cringe. Like,
wait, now did you, when you started this, did you have to cut out people? Because I had the chopping block was fucking going the entire first year of business, except for maybe a handful. No one else is in my life who was back then, because I couldn't.
I didn't actively like block anyone out. I'm lucky to have like a very strong friend group from like childhood, but I did notice a lot of people like lurking on my socials more than normal. And they're the same types of people who are like now asking me questions in my DMs years later. So I find that interesting. But yeah, it's like finding people who are supportive of your dreams and saying like, how can I help? Even if it's just like sharing out one of your posts, or like, let me create this intro for you. Like, I know somebody who's hiring. And then like generative, like, okay, like what are we doing here? Like not just like invalidating, and like the energy of a friend group or a partner that has those qualities is much different than the opposite.
Oh yeah.
The next quadrant is leisure and fun and recreation. Like the shit that you do for joy, just for the sake of doing it, not because you are looking for any reward or any merit or any money associated with it. This is the one that I am working on the most right now because I've never had strong foundations outside of work. I've been a workaholic for a long time, and
Same.
or I was a workaholic. Like, I am intentionally trying to create new patterns and not recreate unhealthy work patterns in my business. It requires intentional effort. So it's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
what do you do? Like, do you have a physical hobby? Do you have a non-screen hobby to get you off of all of your devices and get your senses engaged
It's
in
hard.
something?
It's so hard to not have a screen. I mean, I have many hobbies that are not, but it's so funny because I watched something the other day. It was a YouTube video about how like someone was saying, yeah, Gen Z needs to like not have their personal brand be their hobby. They need an actual hobby. And like where people are
Yes.
forgetting that hobbies are like going out in nature and like doing things that don't are not in front of your phone, like playing games and
Yeah.
like shit like that. Even I mean, I'm guilty of it too, right? Like I consider one of my hobbies like vision boarding on my Pinterest board. Still in front of a
Yeah.
screen. It's still
Right.
like blue light.
And your brain is looking for like that immediate dopamine release, but I want to
Hmm.
encourage people to say like this is where the passion falls in this bucket. It's not in like the work bucket. And passion isn't a starting, like, this is why I hate, and this is another professional piece of propaganda, is follow your passion, because passion is not a starting point. Passion is a byproduct of you following your curiosity, developing skill, developing master over that skill into craftsmanship. And that's what makes people passionate, because you are in deep work mode and you are
I
currently
love that.
continually refining your skill set. Keep your passion in your leisure bucket, in your leisure quadrant, so you have something to look forward to outside of work. You have a strong foundation. That's going to look different for everybody. The goal here isn't to become the best at it. Like, you will eventually get there if you continue that skill development.
Hmm.
The goal is to just do it for the joy of doing it. So if at any point you're doing a hobby and you're like, oh, I don't like this, but like every one of my friends has the yoga certification and now I need to get a yoga certification, but like I hate hot yoga and this is like I don't look forward to it. It's like, why waste your time doing it? Pay attention to how your body feels when you are in these moments, your energy, your engagement levels before and after, and make decisions accordingly.
It's really hard for people though to like make those decisions because if you were taught through the school system as well as corporate, like what to do, how to do it, right? There's a right or wrong answer. Like people give you tasks, like they give you this corporate ladder to kind of rise the ranks of, oh, you need this degree to do that. Like it makes it really difficult when you have multiple avenues in front of you to choose. So like when you're not conditioned yet or haven't been unconditioned to think for yourself, the most obvious is just to do what everyone else is doing, right? We're all
Yeah.
gonna go to hot yoga and do Pilates and drink our Stanley cup and all this shit just because it's the trend. Like which is not a bad thing, right? You gotta go down the curiosity rabbit hole in order to find what works for you. But it's not easy. It's not.
You said the word. It's curiosity, right?
Yeah.
Society teaches us the what. Here's what to do, not how to do it or why to
Hmm.
do it. And how to do it is completely unique to us. It's not a specific business structure. It's not a specific 9 to 5 environment. It's all about your internal gauge, your engagement, which is how focused or unfocused you are on the task at hand while you are working on it, and your energy levels, which is how your energy feels after doing something.
Hmm.
That
That's
tells
a
you
big
a
one.
world more. That tells you a world more
Yeah.
than just like, yeah, get your Stanley and you're an associate director. So natural next step is being a director. But your body is like, don't do it. Like, don't fucking do it. So we really need to reflect like on a daily basis to say like, what did I learn about my engagement and my energy levels today within my health and wellness, within my relationships, within my leisure and my
Hmm.
recreation. And then the last bucket, which is livelihood, which it's not just work, it's caregiving and domestic responsibilities. It's your professional development and your education and your training and your work. So when you look at work-life balance, like that's too simple. We need to go and look at all of our quadrants and say like, where am I running on empty? And what is one change that if I made it in this quadrant, it would have a massive impact on the other areas of my life? The goal is to not like have all of our gas gauges up in each quadrant at all times. Ideal case scenario, sure, but we don't live in an ideal world. So like for the first couple of years of my business, it was like, I need to sacrifice some fun because I need to pay my bills. So my quadrants for work are going to be like real full, and the relationships that I have are going to need to be really important. And then as that changed, it was like, okay, work is going well, but I notice my health isn't that great. I've been drinking a lot more and it's taking away from my focus in my business. So let me focus on maybe my physical and my mental health and my spiritual health a little bit now. And I've been doing that for the past year, stop drinking. And now I'm like, all right, well, I just realized I don't know how to have fun outside of drinking, like things that I genuinely enjoy doing. So now I'm focused on that bucket a little bit more. And I'm willing to sacrifice some working hours to do it. So it's this like constant ebb and flow of like, what do I need at this moment in time? And I'm giving myself that. I'm giving myself permission to do that and trusting that like that's going to lead to creativity that comes back to my career, comes back to my business. And it gives me more autonomy and control and more of a sense of peace than I have ever felt in my life. Like I'm still unsure of so much, but like I trust that I can figure out what I need and what I want. And I think that's super important. And a lot of us look outside of ourselves for that, and it doesn't exist out there.
Well, being a business owner, as you know, like it is full systems go where you have to 100% trust yourself. Like, and you talk about all those quadrants, all those buckets, like all of those things are no longer dictated by someone else, right? It's hard. But I will say, like you, the being substance free, right? Alcohol free has made a tremendous difference in my life as well, because I feel like I don't want to say know who I am, right? Because you're always going to have like deeper layers that you peel back, right? The onion, you keep peeling back the layers to get to the root center. Like it's a lifelong journey to discover who you are. But I will say being alcohol free has helped speed up the process and cut out a lot of bullshit. A lot of stupid things that it could have been avoided, health problems, people who weren't really good friends. They were just there to hang out, go for the ride, right? Have the drink. But I'm wondering of that, how much it's impacted your business in the sense of like either made you more money, had more clarity, like those really root things that people who are just starting, especially my quitters out there who want to quit, they're looking for. Because for me, it was like basically once I got rid of alcohol, it allowed me to find the real me, which meant that I basically was able to navigate towards a business that made sense, was good for my energy, was good for my health, all of these things, finding the clarity, finding the creativity, all of that. So how has that kind of impacted your business and your personal life and, you know, kind of being aligned with where you are now?
Yeah. The most immediate effect that it had was on my sleep. Like my sleep improved within 2 weeks of stopping. And once you're well rested, like a lot of stuff can happen, which it's great. It's so simple, but it's great. And in a more tangible aspect, from the first year in my business, I literally doubled my business revenue the second year after not drinking.
Oh shit. That's awesome. Yeah. Congrats.
Thank you. It was like, because I could show up for myself and my clients in a different way. I didn't have the hangovers and the anxiety that made me constantly question what I was doing and if I was capable. I was able to quiet that voice a little bit because like you said, like you find yourself in business. I think entrepreneurship is one of the greatest lessons in learning how to be yourself.
Oh, yes. 1,000%.
And to be yourself, you have to know yourself. I will say it's definitely changed my relationships. You have certain friends that stop calling. So like they're not true friends. You know what I mean? If like the only thing that we have in common is that we got fucked up together, like
what's the basis of the foundations are cracked anyway.
Yeah. I can regulate my nervous system much faster. And then you make grounded decisions in your business and your career when it's coming from not fight or flight mode. Okay, I can actually listen to my intuition here, like my gut, which is a real, scientific thing where our hormones are. Like, it's the single thing that I have done that has changed so much so fast. And I just passed 1 year about a month ago, and I'm excited to see what it does in year 2. Like I want to transition into like speaking and things like that, and to travel and speak. That's going to require energy levels.
I was creeping your LinkedIn and you literally put in your bio, I was like, oh my God, slay. Like yes. It was like looking for my TEDx speaking opportunity or whatever it was. Like
working on landing a TEDx and writing a book.
Oh my God.
I'm manifesting that shit.
Same. But I was just like, oh my God, she puts it on her header. Like, fuck yeah. Like she's telling people who are looking like, hey, if you know a person who knows a person or you have an interest in this, like I am readily available and looking and like silently building it in the back. So that is personal brand,
Danielle. Your personal brand, no matter what you're doing, it's future facing. So like you can find a red thread, your zone of genius that weaves you through what you are doing now to what you want to be doing, whether that's a traditional path or like starting your own business. There is something in there. There is something that you are uniquely suited to do. based on your career history so far and your lived experience. Like, I have done a couple of like workshops and trainings, but like I am a speaker. Like, I'm going to be speaking. I've spoken on podcasts, like, but I am like, I'm looking at my vision board over here too. Like, I have myself on a stage over here. Like, I have the big TEDx logo. Like, I'm reinforcing those things that I'm working toward those. Like, no, I am those. I need to embody the qualities of what a successful speaker would do. And a successful speaker would really take care of their health and wellness, to be present in conversations, to listen, to create a speech and practice that speech, to be able to handle travel. Like, it's all connected. And that's why I harp so on values so much, because values are different than goals. You have to embody your values on a daily basis. They're not aspirational. They're constantly reflected in how you behave.
Going back to the no alcohol thing, you're like, okay, this is definitely someone who takes their shit seriously. Like, and even, right, you're taking your leisure and your fun seriously as well, which doesn't sound sexy, but like, we could talk about that in a second. I want you to finish your train of thought, but it's interesting too, because Gabrielle Judge, she just did her TEDx. And like, I think she's writing a book, and it's, I'm probably a few more people in your circle who are already doing those things. You're like, okay, I'm closest to the source, as they say, right? It's gravitating toward me. It's a matter of time before it's me versus just the people around me.
Yeah. And yeah, that quadrant, again, the relationships, please pay attention to the energy of the people that are around you, the things that they talk about, what they spend their time and their money on, because those are all inputs that your brain is trying to make sense of. So if starting your own business, career change, whatever, it's a mind fuck. But we really need to get real with ourselves and say, like, if I look at my time, who I spend it with, all of that, what would that tell me about what I value? If you gave me access to your bank account, your calendar, and your social media feeds, what would that tell me about what you value? If you gave me access to your screen time on your phone right now, what would that tell me about what you value? What social media apps are you on? Okay, what information are you consuming on said social media apps? And is the energy exchange worth it? Like, yeah, you have those limited fucks to give. Like, you're giving those fucks away with each thumb scroll. What are you consuming? And I think, like, it's not to shame us. It's just to say, like, how can I get closer to living the life that I know that I am capable of living?
I mean, it's easier said than done, right? Those are things that happen in layers, and they happen over years, because even though, like, there's that whole thing where, like, you know what you need to do, right? You know you need to go to the gym and eat well if you want to lose weight or whatever it is. But knowing it and actually doing it, or keeping consistent, or building a routine that works around your schedule, your friend group, like whatever it is, and the future version of yourself too, which you're currently trying to change from your current self. It can happen over years, even longer, decades. It really depends on the person and what they're doing. But I like to do audits at least once a quarter, if not every 6 months, of like, what's working, what's not. Do I like this? Am I happy? Like, and also being a woo bitch, I'm like, well, do the moon cycles like every 30 days. Like, what happened? That. Like, you know, like, are the themes relevant? Just to, again, keep me kind of, I need a little bit of some structure. So I'm like, okay, I'll use that. But having those audits, again, even the sense of like the fun and leisure, which is so important, like, am I actually having fun and using my leisurely time in a balanced and impactful way, is something that I don't think a lot of people actually consider.
Yeah. And I think, like, we have to give ourselves grace, and we don't have to go from doing no workouts to working out 5 days a week for 90 minutes at a time. Like, if all you can manage to do is, like, first put your feet on the ground and then put your workout sneakers on and not go to the gym, that's progress. It's like, how can I make the smallest step forward each day towards what I say that I want? Because, you know, if we talk about spirituality, you hear law of attraction, what you think about, you attract more of. Your brain, particular activating system, that's what it functions. If you are focused on something, it's going to seek out more of that. So the more that we can just prime ourselves to pay attention to the right things and make very small steps to scale that mountain rather than think about climbing the entire thing, the more manageable it's going to feel. And you're going to fuck up. You're not going to get it right. Like, I love to rot sometimes and watch Netflix, but that decompression time is equally important. Yeah, like, like, it's like we have to just give ourselves permission to be human and just be honest with ourselves about where we're at.
Now, when it comes to, again, like being alcohol free as well as running a business and even like being an employee, right? If you are stressed out of your mind, you're working crazy hours or working multiple jobs, obviously, right, having a life and having fun and things like that is important, but it might change and look different to every person. But like, what are some things that people can do to rediscover fun and balance leisure with work, right? Whether they're an employee or like a corporate quitter, let's say.
Yeah. So we need the strong foundations outside of work. And this is something I'm very much still learning. And I am choosing to start and keep it simple. So, for example, coloring books and puzzles and playing Yahtzee, like literally basic things of just like, how can I disconnect my brain from work and do something that just is like, it engages my brain and my senses in a different way. So that is what I'm doing. But another big one is getting out in nature and like getting off of your phone.
I feel like that's the theme. It's going to be the decade-long theme of like, be in nature, touch a tree, go in the sunshine, like be in
put
the fresh
your feet
air.
in the goddamn grass. Like,
yeah.
Because we're hooked on our phones. And like even like I was like a personal development like junkie for a long time. And I ultimately like stopped consuming so much of that because it always made me feel like I was not enough. So another thing that I do is I was like,
it sucks because you're obsessed with it. I was too, but then you're like, at the same time, I'm shamed into thinking that I'm not good enough, and therefore it creates all these. Anyway, continue.
And everyone has, and they're all saying the same shit anyway, just in different ways.
Very like, culty sometimes.
There's something to be said about like wanting to learn and grow and develop. I've listened to podcasts and that have like really changed my perspective on things or helped me learn something new about myself. But it got to the point where I was like, all right, what book do I need to read? What podcast do I need to listen to? I was like craving it. And I would be like, all right, well, now I have a break for lunch and I'm going to go on a walk and I'm going to put a podcast in my ears. So I'm like listening. My brain is processing constantly. So like another simple thing that you can do is just go for a walk. And if you can't leave your phone at home, put it on Do Not Disturb in a pocket or in a compartment in a bag that is out of reach and just walk and allow your senses to engage in what's around you. And then another thing I'm doing too is I am just reading more fiction, not self-help. And I have a lot of porch time. So I'll like bring my coffee and sit on my porch and just like try and watch the birds and like calm down. And those things are fun for me. I'm like, oh my God, look, I saw an eagle the one day. Like,
oh my God, isn't it so funny how that happens? Like as a young one, I was like, oh, these old farts and they're like weird bird habits and this. And now I'm like chasing butterflies and doing all like, it's just funny how we become the thing that we're like, oh, I would never be that. Now we're reaching kind of the end of the podcast. And one of the things that I've started to ask people is, it's a newer kind of idea, and I hope it doesn't throw too much of a curveball your way, but it's, has your life turned out how you expected it to be?
No, in the best possible way. If you talked to me, 5-6 years ago, pre-pandemic, I would have told you that I still wanted to climb the corporate ladder. I wanted to probably run my own like traditional company. And I am 100% not who I thought I would be. Mm-hmm. I've learned to love myself in different ways. And I am genuinely like, I feel like women get really scared of like aging. And I feel like the opposite. I cannot wait to meet the version of myself in 10 years if I continue, or when I continue on this path. Like, I know she has so much wisdom for me and like, I'm excited to meet her. You know what I mean? So before I was just scared of everything and like, I need to be in control. I'm not sure what's going to happen. Like, how can I make sure that I'm going to make the right or the wrong decision? Like, blah, 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 blah. There's no such thing. There's no such thing as the right or wrong decision. It's all just information. And like, yeah, no, it has not turned out the way that I expected, but it's exactly what it needs to be.
It's funny. I've asked that question, I think the past 4 guests or so. And it's the same thing. Everyone's like, yeah, things aren't perfect, but like, I'm not I'm better than what I expected to be. Like the things I've experienced, the person I've become, the energy I have, the excitement for life, like it's 10 times more. Again, they're all corporate quitters, right? So basically they get to call the shots for versus being told what to do, which is completely different. When you have complete autonomy in your life, it really does change the way you experience life, but doesn't mean it's not hard. But I appreciate you sharing that with me because I resonate with that. And I know a lot of other people who are either about to quit or they're in their like the beginning phase of their quitter journey, like maybe 6 months to a year in that. It's a little
Yeah.
scary because you're like Bambi legs, don't know what to do, but
Yeah.
knowing that it's going to work out, at some
Yeah.
point in time, and overall it's typically better,
Yeah.
it's nice to hear.
Yeah. And the process is the point. Like, we want a business because we want freedom and autonomy, and we want to make a lot of money or make solve a specific problem. So the more that you can try and embody the feeling that you are trying to create in your days, like, what freedom and autonomy am I building into my schedule today? Like, the more things are going to align for you. And I've learned things about myself in this process that, like, I never ever thought just by going through it. So, like, to people who are unsure about where they're going to wind up, like, it's okay. Like, you're going to figure it out. And just reflect and stay curious about what you're learning about yourself at each point in the process and how it feels in your body.
Mm-hmm. It's a nice little tie-up, like, big red bow to put around the episode. So this has been really, really great. I think people who are either quitters or they're still in corporate will find a lot of value from this, especially for those in corporate who want to make the best of their scenario right now, who are like, my back's against the wall, I don't know what to do. So I'm hoping this is just a helpful resource for them. But for those listening, you can find Danielle's information in the show notes. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see it in the YouTube description. But thank you so much, Danielle, for coming on. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.